What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Let's Play series. So today I thought we'd get started by making ourselves a nice Empower setup. So I've already got everything needed that we have to do for our Empower. So we have our 4 display stands and our 1 Empower block itself. Alright, so now that we have our stuff that we need for our Empower, I kind of think we can put it over here, right here in the center. That's part of how I've designed this building. So we'll start with our Empower right here in the center. And then probably I've got to figure out something better for the lighting here, so we'll just do that. And we will go ahead and toss down our 4 display stands, 2 blocks out on all 4 directions of the outer sides of our display stand, or of our Empower here. So I need to get it hooked up to some power, and this entire building hasn't been mapped yet, so let's go ahead and get that handled. We only have to route a couple of these little relays over, no biggie. And I found a cute little secret with these guys where if you split up the relay or the wire coils in your inventory, you can actually hook up 2 at a time without having to make multiple trips. So let's get ourselves some empowered diamantine crystal blocks, because I'm trying to get myself the XP solidifier that I've been working towards for the last little while now. So it's just going to require a diamantine block, some clay blocks, and some light blue dye. And I need 2 of these in order to make our Empower, or our empowered versions rather. And we need 2 of these in order to make ourselves the XP solidifier. So the reason I like the XP solidifier is because it stores an infinite amount of XP compared to the liquid tanks that we have. So those liquid tanks are going to run out. So I've just got to wait a little bit of time here for these display stands to refuel on power, because they're going to run out if I don't. It takes about, I think, 60,000 crystal flux to make these. I can't remember off the top of my head. And so it definitely is important to make sure that these guys have enough power, and it's coming in pretty slowly from our 2 water wheels. But this episode, we're going to get that handled. We're going to get ourselves a decent bit of power and some good stuff going with that. So here in just a second, we should get our last empowered diamantine crystal block, and we can get ourselves, there it is, cool. And we can get ourselves the XP solidifier that I've been wanting for so very long. So the recipe has been changed in this pack. I changed it in my own pack as well, so that is perfectly fine. But I do think that this recipe is definitely a lot harder. It uses 6 emeralds and the 2 empowered diamantine blocks, and I think it uses one of the advanced coils as well. I have to look at that again as well, but yeah, it does. So we'll see about that. So I'm going to take just a second before we cut over to apologize. My microphone audio got really badly messed up for this original audio clip, so I'm having to do some voiceover. And you can get used to this style because I'll be doing it for the last part of this episode too when we get into some of our building. So let's get ourselves our XP solidifier. And now we are good to go. Alright guys, so there's a couple of things that I want to go ahead and get ourselves cooked up here, because we've already got all the resources put together for it. So we want to get ourselves some blast brick. I don't know why it thinks I'm in cheat mode. That's weird. That gives us 27 of our blast bricks, which is all we need. I moved the coke oven over here into the inside of this house, now that everything has been properly lit up, and it's working pretty nicely, that little lamp that we made. And so this guy over here, I think I put 1 block away from the window. Yeah, okay, so we'll do the same thing over here. That'll get us a blast furnace. This is a very simple one. It's, as you can see, it says crude, but it works. The advanced one is going to require more steel anyways, and it'll also require power that we don't have. So, somewhat problematic, and yeah, definitely want to look into some of these optional methods anyways. So, the plan is to let this guy cook up some steel. I'll be doing some other stuff off camera, and when it gets some steel, or at least enough steel to do what I want to get done this episode, I'll come back and I'll show you guys kind of what the plan is. Another thing that I've been thinking about doing that I think we should do is get ourselves a decent setup for crafting. So we have this mod called Engineer's Workshop that I've never used before, but I've been looking at it and it seems very straightforward. Just going to use up some stone and some wood. We have both of these things, so I think it should be a straightforward recipe to do some of these upgrades with. We'll put that down, and we can break these guys. We're not going to use them anymore, because we are going to switch over to a workshop table. Now, this guy is completely useless right now. Doesn't do us a bit of good. What we can do with it, though, is we can put in a couple of really useful inventory items. We'll start with the crafting table. So if we go over here to the upgrade page, we can put a crafting table there. And we can also have a crafting table here. Now you notice as soon as I put those in, it gave us crafting table slots here, which are pretty cool. And we can make ourselves furnaces from these slots and put in little furnaces. So this guy is basically like an all-in-one crafting grid that you can do a lot of things with. But, of course, there's a few things lacking from this. First of all, we want some storage in our crafting grid built in, just like we had before. So we can just do these two like this. What was it? This way? There we go. And if we go to the upgrade tab, we can stick these upgrades in there, and look at that. Now we have storage for various items, such as shears and those kind of random materials that we've been keeping around for a bit. So you'll notice this guy requires fuel. I have problems with that, so I'm going to do some very basic extra utility stuff real quick, and I'll come back when I'm done. So I'm working on getting some lunar and solar panels. They're not the best, and I know that, but I'm perfectly okay with that. I'm just lazy right now and just wanted some simple power. We don't need that much grid power for this setup. But I thought about something that I kind of wanted to make, and that would be some long fall boots, because I've been kind of playing around with the pack in a test world to see what everything is about, and I've discovered a few mods that are really wonderful. For example, Architecture Craft is one that we'll be playing with soon, and Malice of Stores is another one that's pretty great compared to what I was expecting. So yeah, but the long fall boots mod is also straightforward. It's slightly more armor, and also, more importantly, negates all fall damage at 0 cost. So if I fall, nothing. Alright, so there we go. We have our wireless RF battery. We can just toss this guy somewhere. We don't have to ever see it, but we do need to acknowledge its potential here. We can take this guy and put it here, and we're getting fuel. See? So this is really simple, but now we can cook stuff completely for free. So if we look at engineer upgrade, there's one particular upgrade, the speed upgrade, that's very simple to make. And if we make, how many do they stack all the way up to? Is it 8? So we should make a few more of these blank upgrades for sure. Smelting power. Watch this. So if we put half of these here and half of these here, if we wanted to smelt something, let's say we're working and we decide, crap, we should be smelting more glass, for example, if I had any, which I don't. Bricks we can tend to use a lot, or even terracotta. So we can be like, oh crap, I need to make more terracotta, and I can either be a scrub and go use the powered furnace we have, or we can just use this guy. It's going to make ourselves all of the smelting stuff we need, and it'll automatically refuel itself in the end. Alright guys, so I've been letting this steel process, and we've gotten ourselves 2 stacks so far. I think that should be plenty for now. We want to start with 2 garden cloches. That and that. That gets us 2 garden cloches. And now we need to look into a couple of other things. So I added to my Akashic Tome the Engineer's Manual, and we need to get ourselves the following. We need a squeezer, we need a fermenter, we need a refinery, and we need something to burn it all. And so I'll figure the burning part later. We just need to get the preliminary part done. So I'm going to go ahead kind of take a tally on everything that we need here. So this part here is actually sped up at 500%. I kind of wanted to show you guys the building process for this because I thought it should be a little bit special. After all, this is going to be producing most of our power here. So I thought it'd be really cool to go ahead and do sort of a little montage at the end of this episode, because this entire process took me, before I edited all this video, was starting at 2 hours and 51 minutes, and then I cut down a lot of the spam and content in it that was not really relevant. So I'm just going to talk here a little bit in voiceover mode just to kind of discuss the plans and what you're seeing and what's going on. So I'm mapping out this basement building here, trying to get everything kind of planned out to figure out how I want to lay out my structures, because we're going to need a squeezer, a fermenter, a refinery, a few cloches, and we're also going to need a block of some variety. There's a few options in this pack to burn our biodiesel. So I'm going to go with the actual diesel generator from Immersive Engineering. I've never done any of this stuff before, so I've kind of got a lot to learn, a lot to figure out. So one of the things that you're going to find later in the later in this little montage and later in the episode is that I made a pretty critical mistake here in a few things. First of all, I put the cloches down here in a few minutes in the completely wrong place. Second of all, I did not make nearly enough of them. So the industrial squeezer makes a different amount of plant oil depending on what seed you give it. I was going to give it just melon seeds, thinking that that would work out, and lo and behold, while it quote-unquote worked, it would not keep up. I've tried several different things, and I couldn't get it to keep up. And the most efficient producer of plant oil is actually hemp seed. So I swapped out my my second cloche. Instead of doing melon seeds as well, I did hemp seed, which has worked out really well in my favor, except for the fact that I'm still not producing enough of it. So in the end production version that we have currently, as of now, when I'm actually done with all this setup, we have 5 cloches just to produce hemp seeds at the same rate that we're producing our melons. So it's a really complex setup that we've kind of gone for here, but everything has worked out really nicely in the end, and we have a lot of power left to our disposal for future products. So whatever we end up doing in the future, we're going to have plenty of power for it. And I think I'm just going to skip over and maybe cut in every now and then if I see something in the video that's worth noting. But otherwise, I'm just going to let the video roll. So this leaves us with all 3, our squeezer, our fermenter, and our refinery all put together, so we just have to figure out a few little bits left. So the walls for this were pretty easy for me to figure out how to do and what I wanted to do with them. The floor and the ceiling, on the other hand, took several different tries. So I opted for one of these ferro lamps, or what is it, ferro flare lamp or something, to actually light up the area for me. But I had several goes for both the ceiling and the floor of this entire building. So, or sub-basement, I guess you could say. So the problem that I had with it was I wanted to come up with a color scheme that would work, but would also kind of, I didn't want it to feel too laboratory-like. So the white walls were kind of to make it feel industrial, but then I also wanted some sort of sense of like grime and like unkept industrialism. So it took a couple of goes, and you're going to see that here in the video that, you know, I go through and do something, don't quite like it, change my mind, go back, try something different. That's the thing with chisel, is it's really easy to change your mind with a lot of the chisel variants. So like here you can see I'm switching over from the framed ones, from framed plates to the from sturdy to the framed plates. So it's one of those things where I know which blocks I like to build with, I just don't really know how to use them in conjunction. Now, this idea, as I watch it back and as I was doing it too, I was wondering, I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest. I don't like this block at all. It was the right, at least, block type, so that was pretty easy, but yeah, definitely pretty tough. So I go through, and I don't ever mention this again, but I have gone through and made a builder's wand, which is what you're seeing me do now in 500x speed. So this is just to help me with this ceiling part right here, and in future endeavors, I'm sure we're going to have building problems later. So really good to have a builder's wand, and I'm just going with the extra utils one, even though we do have the better builder's wand mod. One thing that I decided that I wanted to go with for this setup versus my usual setup is I wanted to do the actual addition laser relays. After enough setting up and deciding how I liked it, I actually ended up scrapping this idea in the end because it didn't quite fit the setup or the style, I guess you could say, of the building. Plus, I was gonna run into some RF shortage of transmission, and I didn't want to cut myself short here just because I wanted to go with something that was easy to set up. So I actually ended up switching over to HV wire in the end. But definitely thought it was going to be cool to try something new. And it was neat to see it and do it again. But I find that I never really stick with the lasers for too long. I just don't care for their style. The idea of this kind of wide-looking knob thing that sits on the top of a machine to transfer power kind of bothers me. It fits with the style of actually additions really well. It doesn't fit with the style of my usual base building, though. So something that I learned at this point in the pack is that aqueous waste accumulators do not require 2 adjacent source blocks in order to populate their water sources just as quickly. So nice to know, and I fixed that at the house for the stone generator as well. So the original plan was to have the 2 cloches outputting into our sawmill here. The sawmill will turn these melon blocks into melon slices, and then I was going to split the output so that the seeds would, or the melon items would go into a crafter for half of them and straight into our fermenter for the other half. So the seed oil, or the seeds would get squeezed, and the normal melons would get turned into ethanol. So it was something that I kind of had planned to do using this method, and I actually ended up not needing the crafter or the splitting conveyor belt, or really the place that I put these cloches doesn't change or doesn't stay the same either. This was not necessarily an optimal setup originally, so I did go through and change things to be quite a bit better. So I discovered a few interesting things on my own testing. A, you know how we've been having some interesting issues with our wire connectors not really working too well when hooked up to our flux ducts, i.e. why our industrial foregoing setup has run out of power, why I've had a few power issues over here at the new multi-block building that I put together. All of that has been based off of a small bug that I've already reported and I'm waiting to find a solution for, but I found that immersive engineering and thermal foundations, or rather thermal dynamics, do not play well with each other in this aspect. So what I've been doing is hooking up, or to fix this, I've been hooking up our wire connectors to a capacitor and then outputting from the capacitor into a flux duct. I find that doing this has solved my problems most of the time. I haven't actually had any recurrences yet of the issue after I've done this, but I haven't confirmed 100% of the time yet because I can't say that a sample of 5 or 6 is sufficient yet. But after setting up HV capacitors at all these locations and I had the extra HV wire stuff, I figured I'd go ahead and get ourselves together enough HV materials to replace our entire power system with HV lines. I also, for my sake and simplicity, decided to go with the power cell from RF Tools with the power cell link card to sort of get our power out of there from the diesel generator. The reason I did this is because A, the power cell will transmit 5,000 RF per tick at max, and B, I really like the idea of having all of our power coming from over in the water wheel area, and it just seemed logistically like this would be the easiest way of doing that, especially with the issues that I had mentioned with the flux ducts and interfacing with immersive engineering. So this, my friends, is the finalized setup. As you can see, everything is looking pretty darn good. We have our full up power cell, and I am very happy with this relatively loud setup. So I'll see you guys next time.